Hello, everyone. This is Sarah Zakaria, Associate Director of Alumni Relations at the University of San Diego. I'm excited to have you join us today for the Mid-Career Alumni Network webinar, The Art and Science of Career Transition with alumnus Evan Donaldson. The Mid-Career Alumni Network is an official affinity group of the USD Alumni Association dedicated to providing professional development and networking for alumni who graduated within 10 to 25 years ago. First, I would like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us this afternoon. Before we begin, please be mindful that today's webinar is being recorded. Access to the replay of the webinar will be found on the USD alumni website and the University of San Diego YouTube channel about 1 month from today. So if you need to step away from the webinar and are interested in viewing it at a later time, the archived broadcast will be posted soon. On your screen is a control panel with a chat area where you are able to ask questions. Questions are very welcomed, and Evan is looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So please submit your questions and we will answer as many as time allows. If you experience technical difficulties, please submit concerns via the chat area. In the event that we all experience technical difficulties during today's webinar, we will attempt to resolve the issue as soon as possible. If we are unable to do so, we will reschedule the session and an email with a new date and time will be sent to you. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's presenter. Evan Donaldson is the co-founder of Talentry, running a technical services practice based out of the San Diego, California. He has worked in both technology project management and placement for over 15 years, primarily focusing on San Diego and Southern California. He has managed projects, trained and advised, and identified resources for companies to meet their critical technical needs. Evan's staffing and headhunting experience includes who range from senior level individual contributors through leaders of all levels, including C-level executives. He has also helped numerous candidates find new career opportunities. Evan has contributed to many employment seminars, roundtable discussions, and articles, including the UT, PMI, ITSFF, SMF, HDI, and others, and help professionals focus on what truly is important to maximize their career success. Evan is a subject matter expert on the IT job market, candidate sourcing and selection, interview preparation, and optimizing customer recruitment programs and strategies. Evan is widely recognized for his classes and white papers on these subjects and is a regular contributor on LinkedIn. Evan possesses a bachelor's degree in biology from the University of San Diego and a teaching credential from the state of California earned at USD, and has completed the coursework for a master's degree in molecular biology at the San Diego State University. He also serves as the VP of Programs for HDI San Diego Chapter and as a board member for the San Diego Chapter of the USD Alumni Association. Prior to his impactful career as an employment field, Evan also had a career transition, and he was an award-winning teacher at the prestigious Francis Parker Upper School teaching science and math. When Evan is not mentoring, coaching, training, or tutoring clients, candidates, and others to help them improve themselves, Evan enjoys deep sea fishing, karate, hiking, and camping with his family. Welcome, Evan. We now turn the time over to you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate the introduction. Hello, everybody. I hope this turns out to be a meaningful and impactful presentation. I want to make sure that if anybody has any questions that you are free to type them in the chat box at any time. I want to make this as interactive as possible, and I look forward to helping each and every one of you out. So today we're going to talk about the art and science of career transition, and again, I want to make sure it's customized, so if anybody has questions, ask them at any point. Okay, so the proposed agenda for today: introductions, which we've done, career transition, what's the big deal? Sometimes this can include an internal promotion or a functional change within the organization where you're working. It could be an external or complete career change where you've decided that what you're doing is no longer rewarding or fun or able to pay the bills and you want to do something else. Or it could be returning to the workforce for whatever reason, whether it's taking time off to have a family, or whether it's taking time off after some other career event or a medical issue, coming back to the workforce. So we're going to talk about those things. What's it going to take to make a career transition? We're going to talk a little bit about digging your well before you need it. As we all know, networking is a critical part of being able to effectively find new opportunities. We're going to talk about marketing and how you can market yourself a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about effective communication, and then I will save plenty of time for Q&A and discussion at the end. So I'm not going to go too much into this since we've already talked about it, but basically I've been working in the career industry for almost 20 years here in San Diego, and I really enjoy putting people to work and helping them achieve their career goals. All right, let's talk about career transition. So digging a little deeper, this could be because of termination or layoff, boredom or frustration, career viability shift. And what do I mean by that? Career viability shift, if you're manufacturing horse and buggy parts and the automobile comes along, then your existing career may not be that viable any longer. And there are quite a few careers and career opportunities that technology has shifted because of some of the areas that are being replaced by automation, or where there need to be fewer and fewer practitioners, causing some existing practitioners to need to change careers. Could be because of divorce, or sometimes people move with their children, or have to re-enter the workforce because of divorce. Could be military transition. Obviously, when you're transitioning out of the military, a civilian workforce is often a lot different than the military. It could be re-entering the workforce again as a result of having a family or taking time off or a medical issue, or it could be internal. And what I mean by that is I've seen a lot of examples where, let me give an example. Let's say you're an admin and you're doing a lot of admin work and you become very good at writing reports, documenting things in databases. I've seen admins change their careers from an administratively focused one into a data and reports writing focused one, and then actually into a database position. So that could be a career shift as well. All right, so career transition, internal functional change. Let's talk a little bit about that. The nice thing about having to change careers inside a company, or wanting to change careers inside a company, is that the person that's wanting to change careers has a good understanding of the environment and the politics involved. So let's say you're, again, using an example, you're an admin and you want to go into sales. Or let's say you're a recruiter and you want to go into management. Those type of internal functional changes are made a little bit easier by the fact that oftentimes the people understand the power structure within the company. They understand the environment and what it's going to take to be successful. A lot of times they can ease into it too, and sometimes people who are looking to make a career change can actually ask to take on additional responsibilities or take on projects that involve different functional areas. Oftentimes others within the organization, excuse me, trust your abilities and motivations. They know who you are. They know you're a hard worker. Maybe you've been talking about making a career change for a while. And as a result of that, they know that you're serious about it and that you're going to do a good job, or at least put your full effort into it. So even though you can often change gradually, one of the challenges about internal career transitions is that sometimes it can be tough to change perceptions. And this happens a lot where an internal individual contributor moves into a management role, and it's difficult for their former peers to then see them or treat them as a manager, or sometimes the manager then has difficulty, quote unquote, feeling that they're getting the respect for their position, what have you, the authority that they need in order to do their job. And the problem with changing things slowly internally is it does sometimes happen that instead of doing a good job of what you were doing, it can be that you can end up doing a poor job of both what you were doing and what you're trying to do, and maybe end up without a job. So those are things to think about when considering internal career transitions. I've been asked by people inside companies, I've been here a long time. I want to do something else, but I haven't been given the opportunity. And when I quizzed them and drill down a little bit on what that means, well, a lot of times people are waiting for someone to come up and say, hey, you've done a great job at sales. Have you ever thought about management? Or you've done a great job at administration. Have you ever thought about moving more into data reporting or data analysis? Well, it's unlikely that someone's going to do that. A lot of times I encourage people to make it clear within their own company that this is something that they want to do, that they want to take on additional responsibilities. Sometimes it means doing some ad hoc work on your own, maybe develop a report and show it to one of the powers that be, and see what they think. That can oftentimes lead to wow, look at this is fantastic, let's do more of this. I think one of the things that my main points here is that if you want to make a career transition internally, you have to both let people know as well as find ways proactively to take some of those additional responsibilities on. Some larger companies have good internal career path options and career goal types of counselors that can help you. But most companies, especially in San Diego, where we're a pretty small company town, we don't have those exact kinds of roles. So you kind of have to chart your own path. Let's talk about external or complete career shifts. So, a lot of times people say, look, I'm really bored with what I'm doing, or again, maybe I make buggy whips and I need to start thinking about doing something that's not a dying industry. Um, first thing is, are you running to a new career because it excites you? The thought of running a restaurant or the thought of teaching windsurfing is something really exciting to you? Or are you running from your old career, which is, well, I'm really bored with doing this job. It makes a huge difference in terms of how you need to approach things. So it's important to first identify what your motivation is. If you're running to a new career, a lot of times that means you're using some of your skills and some of your things that interest you to try to craft a living out of that. If you're running from an old career, I don't want to say that that's not just as good, and certainly it happens at least as often, if not more often. But one of the things you have to do then is do a little bit more self-analysis to try to find what to run to. Running from a career is a good way to run into unemployment, right? Running to a career is where you want to be, where you want to get to. So if you're deciding to transition away from what you're currently doing, definitely do some analysis into what your skills and strengths are and interests are, so that you can focus in on what you're gonna run to. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. That's an important part in career transition. If you are making a complete transition, you do have to be prepared to take a step back in career respectability and pay. And what I mean by that is, maybe you've had 10 years doing X, Y, Z, and you're a manager or a director, and then you want to change into something new. Well, it's not likely you can start out in that higher level position in the new career field. So one of the things you have to do is you have to understand that there is going to be a starting point. Oftentimes that starting point will be a step back, both in terms of title, maybe responsibility, and certainly in pay. Um, and that can be true even if your career change just involves changes, slight changes within your company. If you're spending your time focusing on something that you don't have as much experience in, you're probably not going to advance as quickly as you would if you're focused on the area where you do have skills and strengths. So it's something to consider. And you also have to understand that others may question your motivation or commitment when you're when you're saying, well, I want to be a movie star now, or I want to again, teach windsurfing or something like that. Sometimes people think, well, that's great, it's a pipe dream or what have you, and you have to overcome that perception, especially from people that you know, but oftentimes from people that you don't know, where you're trying to demonstrate to them or tell them what you're trying to do, whether you're trying to get partners or funding or clients or whatever. They may question your motivation, your experience, and your stick-to-itiveness. So the other thing that is something I encounter a lot is as people get good educations at USD, as they get experience outside in the working world, as they get life experience, they feel they can handle quite a few different things. And I encounter a lot of times folks that say, well, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. And what I encourage people to do is reframe their thinking from an I can do that thinking to a what will they let me do thinking. And that's really critical, because I'd like to think I could pitch for the Padres, or that I could be a great movie star, but I'm not sure that those industries would let me do that at this stage. And I have to sit back and say, all right, is it really likely they're going to let me do that, even though I know I do a great job? And if the answer is no, and if you're not sure you can be objective about it, certainly talk to people that that care about you, that know you really well. But if the answer is no, then it certainly doesn't behoove you to spend all of your time focused on that. And it's kind of a challenge for me to say that, because we're full of stories, movies, TV shows, books that talk about the unlikely success, that where someone had a dream and they pursued it, and then it happened. And I think that's fantastic, and it could happen. I think though that success, whether it's investing success or career success, also comes a lot of times with playing the odds and taking advantage of the law of numbers. And so me quitting my job and everything I'm doing to say at 47 I'm going to go try out for the Padres is probably not a good decision. Also, the other thing I encourage people to do is to remember why companies hire anybody in the first place. And that is, they don't hire you for you. And what I mean by that is they don't hire you to give you a job, give you a paycheck, advance your career. They hire you because they have a problem and they need to have that problem solved. And again, we're going to come back to this a little bit later in the discussion today, but it's very important that when you approach companies or you approach careers, you approach people for funding, whatever it is, that you keep in mind what problem are you solving of theirs, not of yours, but of theirs. And that's going to help you become more successful in a career transition. All right. Um, it's even more complicated when you want to change, but you don't know what to do. So if you're working and you want to do something else, but you have no idea what to do, you have to stop and say, all right, what excites and energizes you? And again, that could be something like, sitting on your couch and watching TV could be something that is exciting to you. Well, all right, you have to ask yourself, how am I going to turn that into a career? If it's possible, maybe there's a career path, but it's unlikely, right? So you have to sit back and say, what is it that excites me and interests me, but that also I can get paid to do and is going to be rewarding and is something that somebody's going to let me do? It's not easy to find the intersection of those different things. We'll talk a little bit more about this later. Ask what you're good at. Ask others what you're good at. Where do they see value for you? If you had to say in your current career or your former career, what are 3 or 4 things that you accomplished? What are the biggest successes that you had? What problems did you solve? Those kind of problems are probably similar problems to ones that company will give you a chance to solve again, even if it's in a slightly different role. So ask yourself, what kinds of things are you really good at? Are you good at making people feel comfortable with you? Are you good at numbers? Are you good at organization? What is it you're really good at? Also consider your values. What is it that's important to you? What is it that you want to do? Have you thought about working with nonprofits? Have you thought about, is it okay to work in the defense industry? Is it okay to work in biotech? Different people have different values that will help you also guide what your next step will be. Consider what problems companies or people are having that need solving. What is it that the company is going through? Again, it's tough when you're looking for a job to stop and consider things from the other's viewpoint, but it's critically important for success. It's a good sales process, and quite frankly, searching for a job, looking for a new career is in some sense a sales and marketing endeavor. And so in order to have success, you really have to ask, what's the WIFM, the what's in it for me, for the other person or other entity. I encounter people that have been out of the workforce or that haven't been able to work for a long time that have done nothing. And what I encourage people is, look, as soon as possible, do something. If you're not working, volunteer. Start next week. Try an internship, write a blog, write some articles for LinkedIn, do something. It's going to be a very a much higher probability vehicle for allowing you to find success in a career than doing nothing. And unfortunately, a lot of us say, well, I don't know what to do. Well, the thing is, it doesn't really matter all that much as long as you're showing you're doing something. If you're unable to work and you're concerned about, well, how am I going to get back in the workforce? A transition might be a volunteer or an internship or something like that, where you can maybe not even work full time, but show your capability. And that's actual work experience, which is important. Don't discount tests. What do I mean by that? Well, there are, whether it's a career coaching organization, or whether it's coming out of school, your career center, whatever it is, there are a lot of tests and exams people can take that will help show them what their personality matches up with well in terms of careers. I remember when I was 21 years old, I thought, oh, that kind of stuff's kind of silly. Well, I've had 20 years of experience in the field, recognizing that it's not really all that silly, that actually, knowing where your strengths lie is really critical in selling yourself, because once you recognize where your strengths lie, that's likely going to intersect with what other people perceive as your strengths, and therefore they're likely to offer that as something that they'll pay you for. Get a mentor, get an objective viewpoint. It's really important to understand what others see in terms of your strengths and weaknesses. It's impossible to really objectively analyze your own strengths and weaknesses. Do some networking, talk to others, ask professionals in the field, how did you get in the field? What do you think a good entry point is? So someone's asked, what's a recommendation on how to find a mentor, and ask them to be your mentor. And that's a great question. Obviously, going up to someone and saying, hey, I don't know you very well, will you be my mentor, is a little bit of a challenge. But I'll tell you a good way, and we're going to talk about this a little later on in networking, but just to sort of preview that, one way is to really engage in a conversation with someone, make it about them, and talk to them about their career. If you don't have someone who knows you already well enough that you feel comfortable that if you ask them to mentor you that they would say yes, then that means you need to go find someone that you don't know really well. Well, the transition step there is getting to know them a little bit so that they can get to know you. And a good way to do that is to ask people about them, about their career, about their ambitions, what got them to where they are. Some easy icebreaker questions, as long as you're in an environment where you have enough time to get to know people. I'll tell you where I get to know people the best is sitting on the airplane. And quite frankly, it's because I have a captive audience, right? They're sitting next to me. And a lot of us, we get on a plane, we sit down, the person sits next to us, and we put our headphones on and we get into a book, because, well, it's talking to strangers is scary. But if you know people that are in a field and you want to get to know them, asking those ice-breaking questions is really can seem hard, but once you do it a few times, it's really not that difficult, because you ask some very non-threatening questions that most people are willing to answer and spend the time talking to you about, and then you can sort of guide where that goes. We'll talk about that in the networking section. If I don't address it again, please ask that question again. Also, there's ways to take classes online if you want to learn new skills. If like I talked about data reporting, that's a growing field. A lot of executives need reports that summarize data really well, and someone needs to gather all the data sources together and make sure that the data is clean and get that to them. And yes, that's a field that's becoming more and more automated, but no matter what, the data is never 100% clean, and people have to go track stuff down. How do you get into that? Well, take a class on data reporting. How can you do that? Well, you can sign up for extension courses. You can sign up for graduate courses, USD. There are extension courses here. There are online courses. Not to take away from USD in any way, but there's courses all over the place out there in the world too, based on whatever it is you want to do, whether it's online or at school. So doing some research will help you figure out whether or not there's anything in your field or in your prospective field that might be interesting. And by the way, you get to meet people when you're in those courses too, even if it's virtually, and you can use them as people that can help you become, can help be your mentor, or sometimes they'll be happy to help you get a job, because once they get to know you and like you and trust you, then they'd rather have you come to work with them than a total stranger. All right. Are there opportunities out there? That's another thing people ask themselves. They say, well, I've been looking on Indeed or Monster.com or whatever, and I just don't see a lot of jobs that match what I want to do or what my exact skill set is. And the problem with that is because you're looking at job titles and job descriptions and qualifications. And that's not why companies hire people. They don't hire you because of skill sets. They hire you because you can solve a problem that they have. And there's this, if you think about it, some people say, oh, that's the same thing. It's not the same thing. Just like a job description doesn't really tell you exactly what a job does, your resume doesn't tell a company really what kind of problems you solve, what your characteristics for success are. That's why a company's really hiring you. And so if you can figure out what problems you solve, the next step is identifying what companies are having those problems, not who's hiring job X with title Y. It's what companies are having those problems. Those are going to be likely the companies that will want to hire someone like you. What kind of problems do companies have? Well, they have problems that arise out of implementations, alliances, new contracts, new markets, rollouts, upgrades, build-outs. Companies are changing, and they're having to change faster and faster, and that change is opportunity for folks that can solve problems that come about as a result of having to make those changes. Even companies that are downsizing or laying off, well, that's a job opportunity for somebody. What about if you work in the outplacement industry, right? A company that's having a big layoff needs to hire an outplacement organization. So there's opportunities in every kind of company undergoing any kind of change, and nowadays that's virtually every company, depending on what it is you do, what you have skills to do. Specialized personnel, new skill areas, new technologies. For example, a lot of times some of my clients have gone from having their IT in-house where they have their servers in a closet somewhere to having it in the cloud. Well, someone needs to manage that transition. The cloud provider has folks that they need to hire. So there's opportunities in all of those areas. The addition of social media marketing, Salesforce is a huge area. In fact, while I was sitting here at USD waiting to get on the phone, or get on this conference, I had a client call me up and say they need a Salesforce person. It's a huge, huge area of growth. New technologies. Companies that are growing will need to hire people. Companies that are offering new products and services will need to hire people. And then companies that are looking to outsource or use professional services, they may not be themselves looking to hire, but what about the companies that they are outsourcing to, or the professional services companies who are supplying them with professional services? Those clients are going to need to, those companies are going to need to hire folks. All right. Well, who do they hire? What happens if you can convince a company that you can save them money, win them customers, decrease their time to market, allow other strategic initiatives to move forward, achieve innovation, differentiate or brand themselves, remove annoyances, i.e., boy, I really wish we could get rid of Harold over in that office. He's a real pain. Streamline processes, they'll hire you. I mean, these are the challenges that companies are having. So when you're asking, what value can I offer? Well, the answer is, how can you help companies with these issues? If you can help them decrease their time to market because you're a better programmer, then they can be convinced to be interested in hire you. If you can help them differentiate or brand themselves because you're really good at marketing or social media or something like that, then they may hire you to do that. They may hire you as an employee. They may hire you as a consultant or a contractor, but somehow there's a business opportunity there. These are the kinds of things where companies are constantly saying, who's going to help us with this? Of course, it's important to consider where your skills and abilities and interests overlap with what can sustain a living. We talked a little bit about that. If you only have two of the three things and you lie in one of those light blue quadrants there, you're going to probably end up dissatisfied after a while. Either you'll be poor, or you'll be bored, or it's going to be unlikely that what you love and what pays well, but you're not very good at, is going to pay you. That's me pitching for the Padres, right? So the dream job is where those three things overlap. And I know people have heard other folks say that, and they say, gosh, I just don't know where that overlaps. Well, the reason why is because a lot of the people I talk to are looking at that dark blue area right off the bat. And what I tell people is, look, take each of these separately, make 3 lists, and then find out what's closest. Like what are some things you love doing and that you're good at and that pay. So I love teaching. I taught and I was very successful at it. I'm good at it. And providing training and coaching pays pretty well. And so that is an area that I've pursued because that's an overlap of those 3 things. Now, it took me a while to get there, right? And but understanding where those things overlap is going to help you focus your career search if you're still unsure of where to go, if you're running from something. So, basically it's kind of a rehash, but it's not about job titles or jobs, and people that go online and say, oh, here's a job title, and it says must have PhD and 7 years of experience with Magento and know how to program Van Trap converters and blah, 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 and everyone gets discouraged because I don't know, no one matches all that stuff. Well, it's getting hung up on skills and not focusing so much on problems. Figuring out what kind of problems are companies having, what kind of problems can you solve, and then how do you get to the right person to tell them that you can solve and show them that you can solve that problem. Oh, by the way, companies and consumers, companies hire people for only one reason, and that reason is they have a problem. Returning to the workforce, start with people you know. Big mistake I see people do is they say, I'm looking for a job. Let me illustrate that with an example that'll help prove the point. I worked for a company a while ago that put about 22,000 people a year to work for various durations. And when I would go to networking events, I would have folks, sidle up to me and say, hi, what do you know, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, are you guys hiring? And I never knew quite how to answer that question. Now, let's back up and take a look at what I just said. Well, of course we're hiring. If we are 22,000 people a year, we're kind of always hiring, right? Heck, there's only 365 days in a year. So we're kind of hiring all the time. Well, why didn't I say, yeah, we're hiring? Well, because there's a big gap, because what I'm thinking is, well, I don't know what this person does and what problems they solve. I don't know if we're hiring you. So if you ever go to people and say, are you hiring? And they say, well, yes, talk to HR, look on our website. That is a conversation that's gone completely the wrong way. My recommendation is to find out, what kinds of things is your company doing? What challenges are you having? Well, the biggest challenge is we're looking to, we've got this system and we bought this company that has this other system and we can't get the two systems to talk to each other. Oh, well, that's what I did for my last two companies is I got systems to talk to each other. All of a sudden, regardless of whether there's jobs posted or whatever, you've got that person's attention, right? And it has nothing to do with titles. It has to do with solving problems. Um, when I say be prepared to discuss what you did while you were off to stay up to speed, people get discouraged. They say, well, I wasn't solving company problems. I was raising a family. Okay, that's fine, and that's wonderful. And it's a great avocation, and I have a lot of respect. It's a hard job in and of itself. But I think the important thing to do is, you've got to keep your toe in as much as possible in the professional world, whether it's writing a blog, taking some classes, doing some volunteer work, professional organizations, going to the meetings. If you haven't done it, you say, oh, I should have been doing this. Start now. Start right now. Find an organization, sign up. They have a meeting next week. Go. I should have been doing, shoulda, woulda, coulda. Well, okay, great. Maybe you should have, but you can't go back and change the past. If you could, you wouldn't need to look for a job. Be current with technology and prepared to show it. What does that mean? Well, even if it's something as simple, a lot of jobs, almost every job I see nowadays in the white collar world will say on it, must be proficient with Microsoft Office, Excel, know how to use Excel, PowerPoint, Word. Well, all right, some people are pretty rusty on those things too. So I would say, even if it's going on YouTube and practicing along on some tutorials there, how do you write a pivot table? How do be prepared to say, yes, I know how to do that, and prepared to show it. Regardless of the position nowadays, virtually all of them involve some interface with technology. Be prepared to focus on characteristics for success. You can turn that conversation into, rather than someone says, oh, Evan, how many years experience do you have programming Van Trapp converters? Well, I can say I don't have any years experience programming Van Trapp converters, and I can leave it there, or I can say, well, I don't have any experience per se programming Van Trapp converters, but I do have quite a bit of experience programming in different languages for different things, and I know that those particular skills will allow me to pick that up pretty quickly. In fact, let me tell you about a time when I had to pick that up quickly at my previous company, and what happened. So what you're doing is you're taking a skill set, you're giving an example of how that skill set, that characteristic, for not the tool, but the overall type of skill, how you were successful at a previous company. And look, sometimes it's not going to work. Maybe they need an expert in this given tool, in which case it's not a good opportunity for you. But maybe they just need someone that they trust can come in and pick this up and do a good job. Do not equate things that were not done for a professional paycheck with those that are. So sounds a little contradictory to what I was saying, but it's not, in that you do need to stay up with technology. You do need to stay up with whatever skills that you are intending to use as a profession, but you cannot say that that's the same as work experience. Companies don't trust that. If you take a class and part of the class is writing, coding software for your class, they don't really count that as work experience. And I've had people that sometimes say, oh, I've got 2 years of programming experience. And when you drill down, they say, well, it's because I was doing these class projects. Okay, companies don't view that the same way, whether it's fair or not. So you have to kind of parse that out in your conversation with folks and say, well, I have 2 years experience, but it was, doing class projects. Here's what I did there, and here's how I think it's applicable. The other thing is, people who are going back in the workforce tend to be very tentative. Look, if you don't know what you're good at and you go into an interview and you don't know that you can solve a problem and you don't know if you're any good, chances are it's not going to be very successful. You have to go in there confident that you can solve problems. Now, you may not be confident that you can exactly solve their problem using the tools they want used, in the timeline they want, but you have to at least go in thinking that, look, if I'm given the opportunity, I can come up to speed and I can conquer this. And that confidence goes a long way with people who are interviewing you. And I tell you, I've interviewed a ton of people, and there's a good portion of them that they just seem so tentative or sometimes bored or scared, I mean, it raises red flags right there in terms of hiring them. It's like, well, what do they know that I don't know? So dig your well before you're thirsty. Networking is important. It's how nearly 4 in 5, let me say this again, it's how nearly 4 out of 5 people get their job. Every job I have had since I graduated from USD, every single one was as a result of networking. I have never applied online to a position and gotten a job or any of that kind of stuff. It's all been through networking. Now, some people say, oh, well, that's a special case or, goody for you, but what about me? Yeah, look, the bottom line is the more you develop your network, the more people will like you, they will trust you, and therefore there will be opportunity for you. When you get to the point where you've convinced people you can solve their problems, your resume becomes an afterthought. Several of the positions where I was hired, the resume was the last step, not the first step. It was like, oh, by the way, Cecilia in HR needs to have a copy of your resume on file. Will you make sure you get that to her? Right? Well, that's because I was hired because they knew I could solve a problem they were having, not because they looked at my resume and said, oh, look at this fantastic resume. Resumes are not good ways to prove that you can solve problems. They may help, and a well-written resume does help, and it may get your foot in the door. But again, nearly 4 out of 5 people get their jobs through networking. And it's something that should be done now and every day from now on. A lot of us that are looking to get back in the workforce or make career transitions, we like to think we're being busy, right? We go on Indeed or we go on Monster, we apply for jobs. We could do that in our skivvies in our home computer, and we feel like we're doing something. Well, look, 80-20 rule, right? Pareto principle. You're spending 80% of your time on the thing that's going to give you 20% success. That's a bit of a mismatch. I would say 80% of your time should be focused on developing a network, getting out there and meeting people. Even if you're not good at it, you have to get good at it. It's a sales process. You're selling your ability to solve problems. And the secret to networking is not that hard, and it becomes a lot less scary when you know the secret and you use it a couple times. Number one, it's not about you. It's about them. It's about the people you're meeting. If you go into it thinking, I'm here because I need a job, it's going to, I almost guarantee, be unsuccessful. If you go and think, I want to find out about these people, what they do, what kind of challenges they're having, then your likelihood of success is going to go up, astronomically. Importantly, and sometimes I have a challenge with this, you got to do a lot of listening, right? And not talking, because the talking is about you, right? A lot of times. A lot of questions help, asking questions. And some questions, so let me skip number 3 and go right to number 4. How do you break the ice? Well, I go up to people and I say, well, hi, my name's Evan. What's your name? That's an easy icebreaker. But it's funny how scary, people don't even think to do that. I don't know what to say. Well, how about what's your name? I mean, that's an easy thing to start out with. It shouldn't be too scary. Here are some other easy, politically correct, can almost never be misinterpreted or lead to any kind of negative conversation ways of breaking the ice. Where are you from originally? How long have you lived in San Diego? Or if they say their whole life, what kept you here? If they don't say your whole life, what brought you here? What do you do for work? These people love answering these questions, and I've noticed that if you get someone alone at a networking event or something, you just ask these questions. If you get through all 4 of these questions, now you've got someone who's going to chat with you and talk to you as long as you want, because they want to be social too. We're social animals by nature for the most part. The problem is they don't know how to start. It's like dating, right? You see someone you're attracted to, and what do you do? Oh, gee, I don't know. Well, what am I going to do if I say the wrong thing? So you end up doing nothing. Well, breaking the ice with just that initial little bit of conversation that's focused on the other person is gonna really, really go a long way. And it's really going to help the other person feel comfortable, and then you can ask questions that will let you know whether or not this person might be able to help you. Don't tell and sell. Going up to someone, and this, I know 5 or 6 people, some of whom I see on a regular basis, who have a challenge with getting jobs and keeping jobs, because what they want to do is they want to go up and they want to tell you everything. And they'll give you their whole life story, and they don't ask you any questions, and they don't, and it's a bit of a challenge, because unless you had something that's an exact direct fit for them, it's not going to work out. So don't tell and ask questions. Ask a lot of open-ended questions. Get someone out to open up. They have to in order to answer the questions. And if you remain interested in them, you can get almost anybody we're speaking to have a valuable conversation with you. If you're not interested in them or what they have to say, and you're just going through the motions, they will sense that, and it will lead to awkwardness. You have to truly be interested in the other person and what they have to offer, what they do, what they're interested in, what challenges they're having. Okay, very quickly, we're running out of time. Marketing, create a LinkedIn profile, join and participate in some LinkedIn groups, join professional organizations, blog or participate in online discussions. LinkedIn has a ton of discussions. Make some comments, get your name out there. Volunteer, find a mentor. Here are some exciting things. Practice MSA statements, PAR statements, and develop a USP. Okay, now what does that mean? So MSA is made, saved, or achieved. Companies hire you because they have a problem. One way you can help them understand what problems you solve is to talk about things that you made, things that you saved, or things that you achieved. If you've been a homemaker, it's okay. Talk about how you managed a budget. Talk about how you managed, critical, conflicting time demands. These are things, these are skill sets that you have. These are characteristics for success that are transferable. If you have more specific things that you personally designed a database that allowed blah, 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 whatever, great. But practice talking about not tools that you've used, but things that you've made, money you've saved, or things that you've achieved. PAR is another thing that I encourage people, if you can write down 5 of each of these, this is going to go a long way towards helping you get a career in whatever it is you want to do. A PAR statement is problem, action, result. When in your career or in your life did you encounter a big problem? What action did you take as a result of the problem, and what was the result of your action? I noticed that our database was taking 3 hours to load. I developed a script that would allow it to load in 0.2 of a second. As a result of that, we were able to process claims 500 times faster, which beat our competition out and increased our business. Problem, action, result. And what's USP? USP is a unique sales proposition. What's your brand? What do you do? Sometimes I've heard people go around and say, I'm the blah, blah, blah guy, or I'm the thus and such gal. And sometimes it's so funny because it sounds a little corny when you hear it, but you know what? You don't forget it. And the other day I was thinking, I wonder who I can use for some marketing videos. And I remembered the guy that said, I'm the marketing video guy. And his name just popped in my head. And so I'm going to give him a call this week. And it's a result of his unique sales proposition. If you have one thing, like if you want to teach wind sailing, then when you introduce yourself to people, you need to say, my name is Bill Jones. I'm the windsurfing teacher. I'm the windsurfing guru. I help beginners become experts. Something like that. I don't know. I'm not a marketing person, but anyway, you get the idea. You've got to develop a unique sales proposition that brands what you do. And then the other thing I say is do something. A lot of people end up with analysis paralysis. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know what job to get. Well, all right, do something. Join a professional organization and go to their next meeting. Go to a networking event and make a goal of meeting 5 people and finding out what they do. That's doing something. It's a great way to start. When you do talk to them, make sure that you have effective communication and that your effective communication is not just you talking, but also the fact that they're listening, right? You have to remember that when you're communicating, somebody else is on the receiving end of that. You want to appeal to their Maslow's hierarchy of needs in a business context. How are you going to help them achieve what they want to do? How are you going to help them look good within their company? How are you going to get them move their career ahead? How are you going to get them to feel good about themselves? How are you going to get them to continue to exist within their organization? If you can look at the person you're meeting and say, I can help this person, if you really can think about how to make them look good, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to have an opportunity there. Because people will hire you to help them achieve their goals within the organization. And any communication you have that helps them see how they can do that is going to resonate very, very well. All right, I'm not going to go too much into this stuff because we talked a little bit about this, and you can go back and look at it on the slide deck. I do want to answer questions, but keep in mind when you're communicating with folks that what's in it for them, right? Not what's in it for you. And the so what, everything that you deliver on your resume or say when you're networking, should have a so what attached to it. If you're saying, look, I achieved this, be prepared to say, and here's why it's important. That's what really sticks with people, is the so what, right? What's your why? Why should they hire you? Communication, learn to listen, be direct and clear. Be flexible. So some people may want to guide the conversation down different roads. Be patient. Maybe you're communicating with someone. I was on the phone with someone not long ago, today, earlier today, that is a talker, wants to talk. I have to learn to be listening because I'm a talker too. So I have to be flexible and I have to be patient, and then be empathetic. Make sure that you're understanding what the other person's feelings are, and that you respect those feelings and can understand them and relate to them. Make sure you develop a good, compelling resume in LinkedIn, and maybe work with a resume writer on that. Plan what you're going to tell your friends and family and your networking contacts. Don't just wing it. Plan it. What is your unique sales proposition? What are the problems that you solve? When you're in an interview, focus on managing the outcome. And what do I mean by that is, make sure that if you have some things you want to say, you have to say them. You have to make sure that you say them. And that if people ask you about tools that you don't have, answer the question, but then manage it towards talking about one of your successful characteristics. What if you were the best at what you did and nobody knew about that? That's where networking comes into play. Make sure you're working with the right people too. And if you're spending a lot of time with folks, look, it's great to spend time with great people, but if they can't hire you, they don't have the authority, they don't have the power, they don't have any influence, that's not going to help you in your career goals. So I was asked a question, what are your thoughts on working with recruiters? Well, I guess I think recruiters are horrible. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it's what part of what I do is recruiting, right? So I think recruiters are very valuable as long as you're working with the right recruiters, and as long as you utilize their services for what it is they can help you with, which a lot of times is helping make that introduction and break that ice and talk to companies about what kind of problems you can solve. If you can talk to a recruiter and you can tell them what kind of problems you solve, they're out in the world. In a lot of times they have ins with these companies. They may be able to say, well, wow, this company is experiencing this kind of problem, and be able to help market you into that organization. So I think recruiters are great, but you obviously, like anything else, you can't turn it over to them. You have to be accountable for your career search. Recruiters can definitely help, but overall, they're just a piece of the puzzle. Sell and close. So when you're talking to people in a networking event, an interview, make sure that you close it. Say, look, I think I can solve that problem, or based on what you just said, I'm probably not the right person for that. You want to get all the way to the end. Right? It's okay if you realize you're not the right person to solve that problem. In fact, other times people will respect you for that. But what you want to do is make sure that you get all the way to the end. If you are the right person, then take it to the next step. Say, when can we talk? When can we meet? What's the next step? If you're not the right person, say, well, I really appreciate it. I'm glad I found that out. It's what you're doing. The challenge you're having sounds very interesting. If I encounter anybody that can help you, I'd be happy to introduce you, blah, blah, blah. What have you. Leave it on a professional note. People will remember that. Effective communication, right? Make sure that you're very careful that your resumes don't have grammar and spelling mistakes, that when you talk to people, what you say matches up with kind of what you do and kind of how you come across, right? Incongruous communication will result in people not taking the next step. In summary, so transition, know yourself, market yourself, sell yourself, negotiate for yourself, get and keep your next job until you decide it's time for another transition. This is a cycle, and if you try to skip steps on this, it makes it a lot harder. The problem is most candidates, and even after I talk to them, they are going to try to merge, numbers 2, 3, and 4 into one thing, which is kind of looking on Indeed and winging it. And you need to parse these things out, all right? Find out, what are you good at, what are you interested in, what problems can you solve? Market yourself. What events can I go to? What people can I talk to? Who do I want to link up to? Who do I want to network with? Sell yourself. How do you communicate with them? Negotiate for yourself. Once they become interested in your skills, you want to make sure that you get a job, or that you get some sort of payment for helping a company out. You don't want to exist as a volunteer for your whole life. Maybe you do something for free to get your toe in the water or what have you, but at some point you need to get paid. All right, so here's my contact information, you know, I love giving presentations to candidates who are looking for new jobs. I also train hiring managers on effective interviewing. We haven't even really talked about interviewing. That's an entire hour and a half, 2-hour discussion in and of itself. And so if anybody knows folks that this type of presentation would benefit, please let me know. I want to answer some questions here right now, so please take this time to ask me some questions in the chat box. We can go back and address anything that you want to, and I'm happy to help out in any way I can. So, yeah, what if a recruiter doesn't call back? Well, you know, if you call a recruiter and they don't call you back, I suggest calling you a different one. One of the things that, but you have to, look, recruiters, a lot of times, a lot of companies, they don't get paid unless they make a placement. So if you're not able to convey sort of what problem you're going to solve to the recruiter, they may not call you back because they've got to look out for themselves and their family too. They have to make a living. If they can't figure, if you're relying on someone else to figure out what you're good at, what problem you solve, that's a problem because they're not going to necessarily take the time to do that. If you can talk to a recruiter or market yourself to a recruiter and say, look, I solve these problems. You know, I write really good code. I helped my last company, you know, clean up their database. I'm really good with organization, and you know, I can help a company, an executive organize themselves, whatever it is. That's going to help and motivate a recruiter to call you back. And if they don't, then call a different recruiter. What else? How do you recommend to find the right recruiter? Well, you know, I think that if you're looking for a recruiter, there's one way to do it is to go online. There's, you know, if you type in San Diego recruiting agencies or San Diego recruiters, look on LinkedIn. Go to, you know, in LinkedIn, go to there's a whole field for staffing and recruiting. You can look up companies that are involved in staffing and recruiting. You know, I think that the other thing too, actually the best thing, and I should use my own advice, right, is ask around, network. Ask, you know, if you ask 20 people, you're going to get probably 5 or 6 really good referrals to a recruiter, because, you know, recruiters are pretty commonly used, especially in a market like this, because it's really hard to find good people. And by the way, for those people looking to transition, depending on what it is you're looking to do and what you've done, now is a really good time to be doing that, because the employment market's very tight. It's really, despite what you hear on TV, the employment market, unemployment rate's very low, and anyone with any specialized skills are super, super hard to find. So it's a good time to be trying to get into that market, because companies will maybe bend their requirements a little to bring the right person with the right attitude on board. What else? Anything else? I'm happy to answer any questions. Well, if there are no other questions, I certainly appreciate the time everyone spent with me today. I hope it's been valuable. I look forward to hearing from you, and again, I look forward to doing more of these. So if there are anybody has any comments or recommendations on how I can improve this, or anyone else that would benefit from it, please let me know. And I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah.
Thank you, Evan. What an amazing webinar. I learned so much for myself. I would like to thank everyone for your questions and participation. In addition, I'd like to thank the Mid-Career Alumni Network for suggesting Evan and this webinar topic. I'm going to forward to the next slide. We have several upcoming events that you can attend. Alumni Day at the Races is coming up on August 2nd. The Torero store opening for alumni, August 8th, mimosas and shopping. Who wouldn't want to do that? And then lastly, USD versus SDSU football at Qualcomm Stadium. That's on September 5th. We have a great tailgate. There's room for families and just lots of fun. These are just a very few of how you can connect to the University of San Diego and the USD Alumni Association. You can also connect to us through social media. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Flickr, and YouTube. In fact, this webinar is going to be on the University of San Diego YouTube channel in about a month. No matter where you are a Torero for life. Thank you again, and have a great day.